Hey, what is happening, guys? Rules for Rebels back with episode 50 of Side Hustle Thursdays. Now, before we get into today's story, I just wanted to mention I'm sending out a personal invite to each and every one of you guys to share your side hustle story with me and be featured on an episode. I don't really care whether your side hustle is making $50 per week or $5,000 per week. I think there's something that we can learn from every story. So far, I've had two submissions, and I'm working on connecting with those guys to roll out an episode about them. So if you're interested in sharing your story, I'll drop a link in the description box below to where you can fill out a Google form to share your story. Now, with that out of the way, we can get right into today's story, which is about a couple of high school students. Actually, they started this business in middle school, which is even more impressive, who earned over $10,000 selling bread at farmers markets. Now, this is a fun story. I love food, I love supporting small business and entrepreneurs, and I actually have a farmer's market down the block from me I go to a lot of times on Saturdays and Sundays. So I head over there quite a bit to grab, breakfast, some donuts, some fruits or vegetables, or honey or something along those lines. The prices are definitely a little on the high side, so I've always been kind of curious about their business model, how much they make, what their profit margins are, etc. Another interesting thing about farmers markets, we've done over 50 side hustle stories to date, and I know we've had at least a business or two, if not three, that have gotten their start at farmers markets. And one that comes to mind is the woman who was selling the glass nail files. I'd have to take a look back at the notes to see what the other... Oh, you know what? Another one was selling dog biscuits. So we've had a number of different stories that have started out at farmers markets. It's a great way to enter a market and test out an idea. Very low barrier to entry, very cheap to start, etc. So today's story is about Amanda and Josh Dawsey, who are a brother and sister duo. And while they are currently high school students, they actually launched a business about 4 or 5 years ago when Amanda was 12 and when Josh was 10. Amanda and Josh wanted to start a side hustle both to learn about business as well as make some extra money, but they didn't know where to start. So, like many students would do, they set about doing some research. They researched where some local farmers markets in their area were, and then contacted a few of them to inquire about renting a stall, what fees were involved, what types of licensing or registration or other requirements they had to meet. And fortunately for them, it turns out that no special permits were required. Apparently, there's something called a cottage law, which allows people to sell homemade baked goods at farmers markets without having to get a bunch of licensing with the health department, like a traditional restaurant may have to do. Now, it's more complicated, of course, if you want to start selling online or in stores, but for farmers markets, all they needed was a business license, a $15 booth rental fee, and ingredients, packaging, materials, and a tent to actually set up at the market. Amanda and Josh borrowed $100 from their parents and set about finding a food to sell. They started with something fairly easy, banana bread. Everyone likes banana bread. They sold their banana bread for $5 per loaf, and at the end of their first market, they had made a profit of $40 after materials and expenses. Not too shabby for a couple of preteen entrepreneurs' first business venture. As time went on, they continued selling at markets. They tried different foods. They tried jellies, jams, brownies, cookies, cakes, but they quickly realized that breads were their best sellers, so they stuck with those. After a while, they realized they needed a Facebook page, a website, and more of an online presence. But because cottage laws only allow for farmers markets, they couldn't sell their product online, so the site and online presence was more just for informational content, branding, as well as keeping in touch with customers between markets and letting them know what markets they would be found at in the future. They had their hands full with baking and selling at the market, so they outsourced the Facebook page to a friend of theirs. He was able to make some money and learn about marketing while they focused on baking breads and growing their business. And with their tech upgrade of a Facebook page and a website, they also decided to sign up for Square so that they could accept credit cards and debit cards in addition to cash and checks. Something I think really comes in handy is not everyone always has cash on them. And a quick word about Square, or also called Square Up. It's a merchant processing system which is pretty quick and easy to set up. It's kind of like a PayPal or a Stripe, but it's more geared towards in-person transactions as opposed to e-commerce. However, that said, Square has rolled out a new website builder and put more of a focus on letting people sell online. And actually, just a couple weeks ago, we talked about an entrepreneur baking dog biscuits who actually used Square's website builder to set up her website, as well as Square to accept online payments on her website. So I'll link in the description box below in case any of you guys are interested in checking out Square. But with Amanda and Josh, as the season went on, they learned how to go from baking only 4 loaves per hour to baking 10 loaves per hour. So in their 16-hour production time, instead of only being able to bake 50 loaves per week, they were now able to bake 150 to 200 loaves per week. More loaves of bread to sell equals more money in their pocket. And in addition to just being able to sell more, this increase in their production volume also allowed them to start buying materials in bulk, which lowered their cost per loaf of bread. So with an online presence, production ramped up, they decided to refine their sales and marketing techniques. They realized that, no surprise, you can sell more bread when you have samples to hand out, so they started offering free samples, and that helped drive even more sales when people could try the product before they bought the product. Now, kind of common sense, but this is really effective. Now, when I go to my local farmer's market, there's definitely been times I've seen products that I normally would have no interest in buying, but they had samples, and after trying a sample, it was so good that I just had to buy one. So this actually is a really effective strategy. Amanda and Josh also began learning their regular customers' names and greeting them with a smile when they showed up each week. And this may sound like kind of a small thing, but it really is effective, and I do the same thing in my business. With my business, we get a lot of phone orders, and I sometimes think that people call for no other reason than to just chat with me. I call all my customers by name, or sir or ma'am. I'm very polite with my customers. I go out of my way to accommodate them in any special requests they have, and I know they appreciate it because they tell me what great customer service they offer, how much they appreciate us, what a pleasure it is to deal with us, and I regularly have customers telling me that they refer their friends to us because we treat them well, and they know that their friends will be taken care of and treated well and have a positive buying experience as well. So there's definitely something to be said for good old-fashioned customer service. Another thing Amanda and Josh learned was how to share their founder's story. And I've talked about this before, how important the About Us or About Me page on your website or your Shopify store is. Gary Vee praises the effectiveness of storytelling in business as well. And this is good in any business, but especially with young entrepreneurs of their age. People are really going to want to support young people out there doing big things and doing positive things. So sharing their founder story helped them grow their business even more. And as they went from middle school to high school, they continued to grow the business. They now have over 13 kinds of different bread options that they sell. They also try new stuff. Not everything works out, but some do. They have some fun flavors like the Elvis, which is a peanut butter and banana bread, as well as some more traditional offerings like zucchini bread, apple bread, and Amish white bread. Amanda and Josh now sell at 2 weekly farmers markets as well as 1 monthly market, and also seasonal and specialty markets. And while revenues change throughout the season, they average about $400 to $500 per week, and all that on just 16 hours of prep time, as well as the time they spend selling at the market, obviously. In 2016 alone, they made over $10,000 in profit, and while they were both saving for college, they both managed to buy a car for themselves as well. The biggest challenge that they face coming up in the future is how to keep the business running when Amanda goes off to college this upcoming fall. And one last thing I wanted to note, while preparing to make this video, I noticed Amanda and Josh are now selling their breads online, and it's available for shipping. So if you wanted to pick up a loaf of their bread, you can pick it up. You might want to buy 4. I noticed the shipping price is the same whether you buy 1 loaf or 4 loaves, so you might as well buy a couple. I noticed on the page with the breads, it says these breads are not made in a facility inspected by a regulatory agency. These are truly homemade breads. So I'm not sure how they got set up selling online, or if that's kind of a caveat, is you just have to have that statement in there. I'll have to follow up with them and inquire about that point, as I'd be interested in hearing what's required to go online with bread sales. But anyhow, guys, that is today's side hustle story. If a couple middle-aged students can start a profitable side hustle, surely you can too. And for any of you guys who are into crafting or baking, this may be something you want to try out. It seems like a fairly low barrier to entry business, as well as an inexpensive business to start. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's story. I hope you were inspired. And until next time, this is Johnny with Rules for Rebels, signing out.